The following presentation is an academic exercise. This presentation does not reflect the views and opinions of Arizona State University, T. Denny Sanford School of Social and Family Dynamics, and the parties listed in this presentation. This presentation is not intended to be a political exercise and was completed in fulfillment of a research project of higher education. Funding for the mental health community in the state of Texas. Presented by Christopher Perepiczka, Arizona State University, T. Denny Sanford School of Social and Family Dynamics. A cause worth funding, assistance for the mental health community, a resource for policymakers and government officials in the state of Texas. Why you are needed, Austin. People with mental health disorders are living in the shadows of our community. Living with a mental health disorder can be very complicated because, unlike many other diseases, mental illness does not have a recognizable outward appearance. People with mental illness did not make a conscious decision to be ill, nor did they make any type of poor choices to become mentally ill. Still, people with mental illnesses live with a stigma from the general public because they are thought of as being weak, not having a real illness or disease, or having something that is only in their head that they should just snap out of. Combating mental illness is a difficult and costly process. This process is very costly because of the highly educated, highly trained, and highly specialized medical professionals that are required to provide the services necessary to diagnose and treat the mentally ill. It is estimated that 77 million people are affected with a mental illness. These people should not live in fear anymore. A cause for action is necessary. Legislators and policymakers can change established laws that will lessen the burden on the law enforcement and criminal justice community to assist the cause of treatment for the mental health community. The timing is right for lawmakers to become more compassionate toward these group of people and provide proper funding as the legislative session is just ending and the 2016 session beginning. Given the current need in our community, it is time to allocate increased funding to treatment facilities in lieu of developing more jails and prison to detain individuals with a mental illness. As enlightened legislators, your vote for increased funding will demonstrate your understanding, compassion, and support for the mentally ill. Funding for the mental health community has been on the downward slide in the past few decades in the state of Texas. With your help in Austin, government-run programs involving the gaming and lottery system can be expanded to further funding from its proceeds. Furthermore, Democrats and Republicans together can establish sin taxes on tangible items for community health care services. When the mentally ill in Texas are not provided treatment, more funding is spent on unemployment, indigent housing, food pantries, and education for this population. If money is provided for the treatment of the mentally ill in a more proactive approach, the mentally ill could possibly not need the government-supported programs of unemployment and indigent housing services because of treatment options available for a self-sufficient lifestyle. In 2004, a U.S. Census survey, 1 in 17 adults were reported to have a serious mental illness in a given year, with Texas having 4.3 million people officially diagnosed with a serious mental illness. According to the U.S. Census, the population of the United States was over 308 million. This means that approximately 77 million people in the United States have experienced a mental health disorder. Likely, this number is underestimated due to the number of people affected with a mental illness who are not diagnosed by a medical professional. Mental illnesses can only be diagnosed by medical and mental health professionals using the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, or the DSM-5. These diagnoses are based upon active interviews, testing, and observation. An individual who is affected with a mental health disorder cannot be officially diagnosed by a family member, friend, pastor, or first responder. Although many individuals may make a personal diagnosis that someone they know has a disorder, this is not a statement of fact until the person is screened by a medical professional. 3 common mental illnesses are bipolar disorder, depression, and schizophrenia. However, a multitude of mental health disorders are listed in the DSM-5. Official diagnosis of a mental health disorder can be costly and may require multiple visits to a physician or psychologist's office. Unfortunately, government assistance for mental health diagnosis and treatment is low and has decreased every year in the state of Texas since 2009. Currently, the budget for Texas Department of State Health Services is $3 billion, yet the largest state-run mental health facility, Terrell State Hospital, has 288 beds and 13 were removed last year. However, in 2013, the budget for the entire state of Texas was $197 billion. The funding for mental health services in the last legislative session was close to 1% of our entire budget. More of a commitment from our state's legislators with the state's budget needs to be considered for mental health treatment. If the funding was at least doubled, nearly 600 severely mentally ill individuals could be provided treatment at Terrell State Hospital alone. Homburg, Kimball, Deal, Usher, and Fitzpatrick conducted an investigation into the amount of funding provided to the mental health and the amount of budgetary cuts that have been implemented toward the mental health community in the United States. Texas ranked 49 out of the 50 states due to its limited government funding for treatment and care for the state's mental health community. Thus, the state of Texas is second to last in the entire nation in providing funding for mental health assistance to its citizens. Due to poor funding and lack of treatment options for mental illnesses, socioeconomic risk factors of poverty, social inequality, and unemployment rise. This is something that Austin cannot afford to do to its community. During this time frame, Texas built a stadium estimated to cost over $1 billion. This stadium has hosted major collegiate events, professional sports events, and artistic events for entertainment. This stadium also brings in high volumes of revenue, which is taxable and can be provided to the community at large. However, in spite of these increased funds, which were meant to help the community, one important population has been overlooked: the mentally ill. By the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI, documentation by this group of economic spending, none of the copious amount of money earned over this time frame was earmarked towards the mental health care of Texas citizens. The Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts, Glenn Hager, has shown that the economy of Texas is stronger than most of the states in the U.S. However, the mental health community's economy still is being funded at a lower level than necessary to sustain its citizens. Proper funding for mental health will improve local employment and employability, build stronger family relationships, and create safer communities. These changes are likely to increase the tax base and tax revenues and improve the lives of all Texans. State and federal governments must work hand in hand to address this issue. From 1970 to 1990, the federal government did not fund mental health through Medicaid. It was not until 1994, when the law was changed under President Bill Clinton, and mental health treatment for the poor was funded. In 2010, the Affordable Care Act, commonly referred to as Obamacare, was signed into law, and in 2012, the law was upheld as constitutional. This act was intended to expand coverage for mental health care and require that all insurance policies cover mental health and substance abuse treatment. Unfortunately, it is yet to live up to expectations. Official brochures were disseminated that reflected confusing options for mental health treatment and delays in allowing individuals to seek treatment due to the approval requirements and had higher payment rates to previous co-pays that patients had. It appears that the federal government has established lackadaisical standards at best for the reporting of mental illness, treatment plans, and understanding mental illness. Understanding mental illness and how to treat its symptoms assist in lowering the level of misunderstanding and discriminations towards individuals with a mental illness. So what are we building then? Mental health treatment facilities are closing and prisons are built. In a study by Lee, Lothbard, and Knoll, this study has shown that mental health patients are spending fewer days in inpatient treatment facilities due to the cost of running these treatment facilities and the cost of treatment. Depending on the insurance that an individual carries, the number of permitted inpatient treatment days covered by insurance diminishes yearly because of the limited government assistance and the rising treatment facility for care. It is less expensive for state governments to close their mental health treatment facility doors or limit the amount of beds in their facility. The limited funding for mental health services has resulted in deinstitutionalization, with mentally ill people forced to live in the community and obtain outpatient services. Without the structure and support of inpatient care, many people with mental illnesses fail to improve or spiral into more severe problems. Because of this deinstitutionalization, private mental health facilities are becoming one of the only remaining options for individuals in need of care. Where are the local, state, and federal funds going if they are not going towards treatment facilities for the mentally ill individuals? The answer to this question is complex, but one possible answer is towards jail and prison facilities. In a recent study conducted by Deal and Hart, individuals with untreated mental illnesses are more likely to be arrested. Individuals who are affected with a mental illness require treatment, and without treatment, their behavior can be erratic and criminal in nature, resulting in arrests. If more treatment facilities and treatment options were provided, law enforcement interaction with people in mental health crisis may be lowered, as good treatment lowers the odds of criminal behavior. Approximately 6 to 15% of all the prison population in the United States are considered mentally ill. By raw numbers, there are more mentally ill people in prisons than in mental hospitals. This statistic demonstrates that the prison system has more mentally ill individuals than the mental health treatment facilities in the United States. Because of deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill in the United States, more people are being incarcerated. Often, these prisoners must remain in isolation in the prison, increasing the cost of their care and potentially exacerbating their mental illness. Our lack of diversion programs for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Institutional Division. If states have inadequate programs for the mentally ill, the prison recidivism rate will continue to rise. This means that countless mentally ill individuals will be in the continuous cycle of entering in and out of the criminal justice system in lieu of treatment. To counteract the problem of recidivism, diversion programs have been implemented in many state judicial programs to provide an alternative to jail for the mentally ill. Diversion programs provide the mentally ill a second chance after criminal actions that were a result of a mental health crisis. Diversion programs require mandatory treatment from a medical professional with judicial oversight for compliance. Individuals who are in diversion programs are given medical assistance to regulate their mental faculties and return to a stable lifestyle. Diversion programs will require government assistance in funding and operating treatment facilities under the care of qualified mental health professionals. Implementing a diversion program without qualified medical professionals, educated judicial members, or qualified public service workers is not cost effective and is a waste of time. Diversion programs will only succeed to the degree that an array of timely, effective services are available. For Texas to have a successful diversion program for the mentally ill, the judicial system must run effectively and treatment facilities need to be available. The current deinstitutionalization process needs to be reversed which likely can be done with government assistance. Solutions from within the state of Texas. Texas Constitution, Article 3, Section 49A, subsection B of 1999 requires a balanced budget at the biannual legislative session. For this budget to be balanced, programs are normally cut or the Robin Hood effect takes place in committee boardrooms. The Robin Hood effect refers to the taking of funds from one program and providing it to another. In the last decade, the state of Texas demonstrated the Robin Hood effect at the expense of mental health funding. To increase funding for mental health, reallocating funds from another program is not a viable option. For example, taking funds from public transportation system to be used for mental health only creates another problem. To keep the necessary funds for established programs intact and safe from reallocation, Texas could use already established funding programs with new allocation that have been successful in the state. The lottery, sin taxes, diversion programs, and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 reform, also known as HIPAA. With diversion programs of money from programs that do not need any further funding in a community-first priority approach, the assistance for mental health treatment can be saved and save the state money in the future. Our very own Texas Lottery. Since the early 1990s, the state of Texas has implemented a state lottery system to assist funding for different causes. The lottery system is funded by the public through the regulation of gambling. Currently, the Texas lottery system takes portions of the proceeds from lottery ticket purchases and provides these proceeds to Texas Education Fund. Smith has shown that when government regulates gambling, they act as entrepreneurs for their state and its economy. If Texas creates its own gambling day, scratch-off ticket, or similar activity, a portion of these proceeds can be devoted to funding mental health initiatives. This is a win-win scenario for both the state of Texas and the mental health community. Texas lottery revenue and distribution will not be changed from its current standard, with only the mental health initiated gaming providing for its funding. This system, specifically designed for mental health, can easily be done. Texas already has lottery systems for education, military veterans, animals, and similar programs. These programs, in their initial year of sales alone, generated nearly $4 billion and over $1 billion in revenue to the state of Texas. The Texas Lottery began generating revenue in 1992. If the first year of the lottery system revenue was $1 billion, the amount of revenue that could have been drawn from the past 25 years could have assisted mental health programs significantly. This was a missed opportunity that could be reversed. Therefore, the groundwork for this public funding system is already in place from the Texas Lottery, making it easier to implement for mental health funding. However, this cannot be a long-term goal for funding for the mental health treatment assistance. Long-term goals need to be established without the Robin Hood effect of slash funding to other programs. The sin tax. Many states and cities in the United States utilize the sin tax as a way of funding different programs, sporting complexes, and development of infrastructure. A sin tax is a tax on specific products or behaviors deemed less desirable, with the hope that it will limit the use of these products or engagement in that behavior. Popular sin taxes have been implemented and used effectively are alcohol and tobacco products. This tax is built into the cost of these products during purchase. It may be placed into an interest-bearing account to further generate revenue, and at the end of the fiscal year or biannual session, if chosen, provided to fund mental health treatment facilities and programs. This would require a committee at the state legislature, though. To date, Texas has taxes to generate revenue on items involving fireworks, production, sales, franchise, and oil and gas. In 2013, from these taxes alone, Texas generated over $43 billion. However, due to improper spending of revenue, Texas spent over $93 billion during this same period. Yet Texas still had a balanced budget at the end of the biannual session. If spending was conducted a little more wisely, the revenue from these sales could be provided to mental health assistance programs. In order to ensure proper revenue expenses and not a deficit at the end of the session during the Robin Hood transfers, Texas can implement income tax. Texas is one of the few remaining states to not have an income tax. New York State has implemented income taxes which are a benefit to the community and for healthcare reform. Furthermore, New York has established criteria for an income tax that relates to the amount of income, exemptions due to children, and healthcare options available, to name a few. If Texas followed suit with New York's successful income tax plan, we too can provide better medical assistance to the community, live at government assistance programs, and provided needed revenue to the state. What can Texas do beyond Washington? Creating and improving diversion programs. As previously mentioned, diversion programs are necessary and useful for the mental health community and can be initially funded through lottery and sin taxes. The criminal justice system is currently spending an astronomical amount of money housing inmates who have mental health disorders and on prosecution within the judicial system. With a diversion program implemented, the funds that were once used for creating more criminal institution divisions can be provided to mental health treatment facilities. The initial costs that have been made by the state of Texas for diversion programs can be reimbursed from the funding proposals, with portions of the proceeds removed to assist Texas' initial startup costs. Diversion programs will provide the local community with employment. New diversion courts create jobs that include treatment facilities, courts, social care workers, and countless other employment positions to keep these facilities operating. Diversion programs are about second chances. The state of Texas has a second chance to provide funding with the programs recommended. These proposed programs do tax the community in new ways, but the previous tax money from citizens and state money can still be directed towards their current purposes if implemented properly. Notwithstanding, a part of the successful completion of a diversion program is employment. However, at the current funding rate, employment programs are not at a sufficient rate to support the number of mentally ill individuals that are wanting to work, and government legislation should require employment programs for the mentally ill. Due to individuals with a mental illness not being able to find work while in remission of a mental health crisis, they are forced to find support from government assistance programs. Family-based planning is also a part of the diversion process, and this could assist with lowering depression, a higher self-worth, and after-school programs to keep children out of dangerous situations while the parents with a mental illness may be away from their child. A successful diversion program assists the parents with a mental illness and can assist with marriages and raising of children. Children of mentally ill parents have learned how to become advocates for themselves, the importance of employment, and family safety when they become parents. The cycle of not being provided assistance, knowing coping skills, and treatment options for the next generation of individuals is redirected to a sustainable lifestyle with the family-based planning of diversion programs. With continuous employment after completion of a diversion program, government-funded support programs of housing, nutritional supplements, and insurance can be diverted to other programs of the state. Assistance from Washington. Adjusting the HIPAA requirements. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 regulations currently require that medical and mental health professionals communicate through a secure system or in an in-person fashion. With the current standard and lack of treatment facilities in our state, mental health professionals have to endure another expense for their practice in purchasing a secure system to speak with other mental health professionals to treat their patients. When more treatment facilities are provided and more professionals are on site at facilities, coordinating patient care can be done face-to-face, and the HIPAA regulation is no longer an issue or concern. To further this problem, HIPAA is confusing for not only the patient and families. Medical professionals are not fully educated in the Act due to the amount of legislation and standards that come with HIPAA directives. Furthermore, if HIPAA regulations are relaxed and more funding is made, physicians feel that they can treat the more difficult cases of mental health disorders more effectively. The physicians also request your assistance in funding and HIPAA reform so they can be more of an advocate for their patients in their treatment. Lawmakers can give mental health practitioners the ability to provide medical information to parents, guardians, and caregivers electronically with or without the consent of the patient if a family risk is present. Because the 21st century is so technology-based and most Texans have a cell phone with internet capability, up-to-the-minute information of patient and family care can be provided with a lessened HIPAA standard for healthcare practitioner discretion. Texas first responders can also assist with a lowered HIPAA standard in disseminating prudent information for timely and reasonable responses for patient care. The goal of HIPAA is to protect information against threats and hazard of wrongful dissemination of patient care and diagnosis. Providing first responders with critical medical information can only assist in providing prudent mental health responses and services for individuals in mental health crisis during their responses to call for services. Finally, Texas should implement a mental health professional to provide oversight in the dissemination of patient information. This mental health professional would be educated in HIPAA laws, provide only pertinent information for family and first responders, care responses, and assist law enforcement with prosecution of criminal and civil damage for noncompliance of this act. This oversight professional is a reasonable and prudent position to implement for a lessened HIPAA standard to be made. For positive change to occur for the mental health community in the state of Texas, it has to begin in Austin. Funding is scarce in this state and the entire country. The mental health community is already being provided funds from the state and federal government, but the funding is not at an acceptable level. Instead of burdening the taxpayers as a whole, the state of Texas and the federal government have politically reasonable and financially responsible options available for funding. You are aware that this state is in crisis when it comes to the amount of individuals affected with a mental illness and that funding is not available with the research of NAMI. The decision to act has to be made, and the decision to act at the expense of other programs is not an option that is worth doing. This state needs to limit its spending on developing new criminal justice institutional divisions and cutting spending on treatment options. This money can be redirected with successful implementation of lottery systems and sin taxes. Once these are established, diversion programs can be implemented, and this in turn creates treatment facilities. These treatment facilities then create jobs, thus stimulating the economy in the local community. The ability is there, it just has to be done. Together, we can do this for the sake of the mental health community that deserves your prompt attention. The belief system that Texas needs. See the person, not the illness. Take action, take the pledge, and be stigma-free.